Hi everyone, this is Adventure 4904 again. Welcome back to another Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 video. This is part 5 of our series of flying to all Malaysian airports. In the last flight, we took off from Penang International Airport and landed here in Langkawi International Airport, Whiskey Mike Kilo Lima. It was a beautiful sunset landing. Please watch the video if you haven't done so. In this flight, we'll be continuing our journey from Pulau Langkawi to Alor Setar Airport, Whiskey Mike Kilo Alpha, then onwards to Kota Bahru on the east coast of Malaysia. For the first leg of the flight, we'll be taking off from Pulau Langkawi, landing at Alor Setar Airport, also known as the Sultan Abdul Halim Airport in Alor Setar, Kedah, and we're landing at runway 04. Upon landing, we will then change our aircraft and fly to the east coast of Malaysia, which is Kota Bahru, Kelantan. We'll be changing the aircraft as well, so to Alor Setar we'll be flying using the Cessna 172 because it's just a short flight. Flight time to Alor Setar will be approximately 35 minutes. Flight time to Kota Bahru will be approximately 45 to 55 minutes. So let's have a look at our flight plan. So we're going to take off from Pulau Langkawi with Whiskey Mike Kilo Lima, and we're going to intercept the bearing of 267 for the Alor Setar VOR. And once we intercept that at Mulut, which is just a waypoint, we'll go straight to the airport or straight towards the VOR, in which we will do our landing. Will we then proceed again to fly to the east coast of Malaysia, passing by or flying over the airspace of Thailand at a bearing of 093. Upon arrival in Kelantan, Kota Bahru, we'll be landing at runway 10. Hope you will join me for the rest of the flight. Let's get into the cockpit and let's get going. Okay, here we are in the cockpit of the 172 Cessna, and let's start up the engine and let's get going to the Alor Setar Airport. So we are going to taxi towards that runway over there and take off and turn left. Right, so let's release the parking brake and taxi to the runway. Since this is going to be a short flight, I'm taking the Cessna up to Alor Setar, and in Alor Setar, if we are continuing our flight to Kota Bahru, we'll be taking the TBM 930, which is one of the fastest single engine aircraft ever. That will make us arrive in Kota Bahru faster compared to if I fly a Cessna there. So if you are not from Malaysia, if you are coming to Malaysia soon, please check out Pulau Langkawi. It's a very beautiful destination for you to take your holidays. Alright, we're going to hold short here for a second to just make sure that we have everything all set up for takeoff. Let's switch on our transponder to altitude. Let's do our run-up check. Light, taxi light on, navigation light on, strobe is on. So let's set the RPM to 1007. Check the magnetos. One left drop. Back to both. 1007. Two left drop, back to both. Okay, so we have all the greens. We have set up our altitude. So I'm trying to make this flight as realistic as possible for a normal, that you would take a normal flight, like a real flight. I'm trying to put in all that I've learned during my training, so it's make it more immersive for all of you, because it's the same and sometimes things don't happen accordingly. So we'll try and I'm trying to make it as best as possible for you guys to experience this in first hand. So we are all ready to go. Looks like the runway is clear. So let's taxi onto position, and I'm not using any flaps for this because this runway is very long. This is the international airport in Langkawi. Trying to use the VOR for the navigation if possible. Already set it up for the VOR for Alor Setar, which is 113.6 on the nav1. Airspeed alive, 40 knots, 50 knots, 55 knots, rotate. Positive rate of climb. We will just clear the runway first before we turn to the left. It's 1,000 feet. Switch on the autopilot to the heading of set to heading of 150 for now. And then 120. So we are flying using the VOR today. I'm not depending on the GPS. Just want to practice my VOR, because if you notice, the aircraft is now really flying towards the VOR for Alor Setar, which is 113.6. We are trying to reach a cruising altitude of 4,500 feet. Let's do auto takeoff checklist, so we can switch off our taxi and the landing lights. We can leave the pitot head off. Press all OK. Once the CDI hits the radial of 267, and then we will follow when it's right in the center. So we should be following the radial of 267 directly to the airport. We should be around there, yeah, 267. And we got another 500 feet to go before we level off. And distance to Mulot is about 8.3 nautical miles. Okay, we're leveling off at 4,500 feet. And the airspeed should catch up, so we're going to bring down the speed right to about 90 knots. So I think we can bring that down now. An RPM of 2,100 should be just nice. So we're cruising at 90, almost 90 nautical miles, depends on our headwind or tailwind. And Mulot is coming up. Once we hit Mulot, we will use the OBS to direct us straight to the airport, Sultan Abdul Halim Airport in Alor Setar. So we are right about here now, and then we're going to take the bearing of 086 out, or 267, into Sultan Abdul Halim. That's 60, 70, 80, so another notch should be nice. So I'm just waiting for this CDI to come to the center, and then we will turn left to 086. That yellow arrow shows that we are going towards the VOR and we are in the nav mode. Okay, we're just passing by Mulut, and let's turn the OBS so it directs us straight to the VOR, which is that one over there. So we have to turn to the east, which means it's going to be about approximately the heading of 090 or 089 in this case. So we have about 23.1 nautical miles to go to the VOR. So we should also start calculating our rate of descent, or the time for us to descend. So we are about 4,500 feet from the VOR, which is approximately right over where the airport is. So if you're going to go down at the 3-degree slope for a descent, we have to calculate, which means 4,500 times 3, which is basically 10 nautical miles away. So at about 10 nautical miles away, we should start our descent into the airport. Nice and sunny outside. We're actually flying over the Straits of Malacca. So according to the standard arrival chart for Alor Setar Airport, the ATIS is 128.65. So let's start descending now, because we are near about the airport, about 6 nautical miles away. Just cut power off, and then let's descend to the circuit altitude of 1,000 feet. Runway is just in front of us. We can see the runway is over there. I'm going to do a right turn a bit just to capture the final approach to the runway. That's the runway over there, and we are at 2,000 feet. The level of 1,500 feet. So I'm going to switch off the autopilot and let's do this manually. Let's put flaps 1. Twenty knots flat. Try and maintain a 70 knots approach speed and landing speed. We are on finals. Let's hit the landing flaps. Make sure trim is done properly. Let's switch on the landing lights. .500 feet to go. Bit windy today. Cut our power and flare. Oh, that was a rough one. Welcome to the Alor Setar Airport, ladies and gentlemen. So we're gonna taxi route up to the apron. Okay. Switch on the parking brakes. So welcome to the Alor Setar Airport, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to just take a break, go and have some breakfast or brunch, and then come back, change the aircraft and fly off to the Kota Bahru Airport. Hey, welcome back guys. We are ready now to take off from Alor Setar Airport to go to Kota Bahru Airport in Kelantan. This time around we're going to use the TBM 930 aircraft. This is one of the fastest single engine aircraft. Okay, so let's prepare the aircraft and let's plot out the navigation and let's fly. But let's look at our charts here. So we just landed in Sultan Abdul Halim Airport. So we are taking off from the airport now, Whiskey Mike Kilo Alpha. We're going to head easterly towards east coast of Malaysia, passing by the airspace of Thailand. If you can see, that is the Thailand airspace. We're going to pass that. We're going to go to a waypoint called Erves, and once we arrive Erves, we'll be going directly towards the Kota Bahru VOR, or the Kota Bahru Airport, which is Kota Bahru Sultan Ismail Petra Airport, Whiskey Mike Kilo Charlie. That's what the plan is. The flight is going to be about anything between 45 to 55 minutes, depends on how high we are flying. This flight I'm going to cruise at about 14,500 feet. Right, so let's get going. So let's switch on the engine for aircraft. It takes a while to start up the engine for the TBM, so I'm just gonna start it automatically. So probably the next time we're gonna use a manual method of doing it. So let's start everything up. Let's wait for the propellers to turn up. There you go. Let's review our flight plan for Kota Bahru. So we're taking off from Whiskey Mike Kilo Alpha, and we're going to go onwards. We're going to turn toward the easterly direction towards Kota Bahru, which we're going to be passing by the airspace of Thailand. Let's switch on our strobe, nav lights, switch on our taxi lights just before we take off. Looks good, so I think we can start taxiing to the closest runway. So we're going to just swerve a bit to the right and then go off and taxi to the other end of the runway. Okay, so brakes off. Okay, before takeoff checklist, we've got lights are on. Okay, so let's set up to flaps 1. Takeoff flaps, and let's hit the .80 knots, 90 knots. Positive rate of climb. Let's put the gears up. Clean the flaps. So let's turn left. It's the city of Alor Setar down there. So we are cruising at 14,000 feet with an airspeed about 150 knots, and we are almost halfway to Kelantan or Kota Bahru. We're just passing by the West waypoint, and once we pass the West waypoint and about halfway through, we will start our descent to Kota Bahru. So we have started our descent to Kota Bahru Airport. We'll be descending down to initial altitude of 8,000 feet, and until we arrive about 10 nautical miles away from the airport, we'll be descending down to the circuit altitude, and we will land on runway 10. We have started our descent to Kota Bahru Airport. We'll be arriving at Mimos intersection in about 3 minutes. So we'll be descending down to about 1,000 feet, and then we will turn slight to the right to capture the 100 radial from the VOR and then land on runway 10. Let's prepare for the arrival. Make sure that we have our landing lights on. Passing 4,500 feet. We need to slow this aircraft down. Let's switch off the autopilot so we can take control of the aircraft. Runway is straight in front of us. We got about 5 nautical miles. Slow the aircraft down a bit. Let's drop our landing gears. Okay, let's give it a notch of flaps. (2,500 feet). Landing lights are on, gears is down, we got 1 notch at flaps. We're about 120 knots. Flaps are down. We're approaching at about, swinging at about 90 knots. I've set up my sim to have the most realistic configuration, so that's the reason why you can see the aircraft wobbling around. So I want it to be as realistic as possible, so when we do all the flights. Approaching at 90 knots, looking good. A little bit of surface wind at the moment. You can see the city of Kota Bahru on the right. Our slope is looking good. 2 reds, 2 whites. Try and stick to the center of the runway. And let's cut the throttle and let this aircraft sit to the ground. There you go. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Kota Bahru Airport, Kelantan. We'll get to the nearest turn off here and then we'll double back to the terminal. Let's clear off the flaps. I think we are here. Right, there's our parking slot there. The guy's waiting for us. Right guys, welcome to Kota Bahru, Kelantan. I hope you have enjoyed the journey and continue to join me in the other flights to come. The next flight is going to be for us to try to fly down from Kelantan down to Terengganu, the airport in Terengganu, which is the Kuala Terengganu airport. Please subscribe and hit the like button if you like what you see, and I hope to see you soon, and happy flying. Take care.